Business leader looking for next? I was. Are you an athlete transitioning to next? I wasn't. If you're looking for your next, this is the space for you. This is the Business Athlete Performance Lab. Hi, I'm Keith Bilous, and this is Live in the Lab. All right. A little bit of weirdness in front of the camera there for anybody who's watching. So I'm like, hey, where's the button? Where's the button? I can't get it going. How did you go viral on TikTok? You were on America's Got Talent. How much did you get paid to be on AGT? Oh, you didn't get paid. Keith and Steve here in Live in the Lab.
You're a great interviewer. I love it.
48 miles, 48 hours. Not just once. You ain't seen nothing yet. I hit 50 last night and I'm like, yeah, things are a little different than they were 10 years ago. So trust me, things are to keep. You have no time for the BS that much of society seems to put on the table. Why is that? Like what you're talking about is real right now. There's just no bullshit here, but it's just real. We brought you in with some Marley. I said, Joseph, let's talk music for a second. You said, well, Keith, oldies, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've never talked to a sir before. Why are you a sir? In many ways, we're the same story. I came from nothing. You came from nothing. I think the old saying goes that if you want a trophy, you climb Everest. If you want respect, you climb K2. I've built an AI myself, and it's pretty fascinating when you can have a conversation with yourself with your own knowledge. Have you done that before? Why are we rushing to make these tools if they're all they're going to do is hurt humanity? Does the world need an Oppenheimer moment with AI?
What a fun show.
Oh, hey. Oh, you caught me. I didn't break the seal though. Oh man. Woo! To those that are listening in, tuning in on the podcast right now, not watching, Keith almost got his fingers caught in the peanut butter jar. What's going on, nation? You got Keith Bilous sitting here. You know where I sit, and I'm live in the lab. And I bring it Monday to Friday. Looking at you, X. I'm looking at you, YouTube. And I'm paying attention over you, LinkedIn. And hey, Substack, where inside.bapl.ai lives. What's going on? Hello to all my new listeners, all my new subscribers. I appreciate the support. You know I appreciate your support because you know what we do. We bring it every single day. Every single day we drop content into your feed. Why? Because we're the accountability company. We create content to keep you accountable, to keep you entertained. You know how it works. What's the saying, Bapl Nation? We're here to what? Entertain and what? Inform. That's it. Let the rest of them inform. Let the rest of them entertain. We entertain and inform. We're going to be informed today, I'll tell you. I'm excited today. We're going to have a great conversation. I already know because the content coming into the lab today, you're going to want to pay attention to it. Andrew Petcash, Profluence, sports, tech, media. We are going to go beyond the headlines in sports today. I love sports, and I know you do, audience. I know you do, all my athletes, all my business leaders, all you guys looking over there to next. I know you love sports as much as I do. And I know you love talking about it. So today we're going to talk about it with Andrew. But before we do that, we talk a lot in the lab here about accountability. Well, today I got another A word to throw onto the table. Wow, a lot of A's pop into our lexicon here in the lab, doesn't it? The Business Athlete Performance Lab. Attitude. Accountability. Acceptance. And how do we talk about acceptance here in the lab? I'm going to tell you how we talk about acceptance here in the lab. And I really need you to pay attention to what I'm going to say next. It's okay. It's okay, guys. It's okay to begin again. Accountability. It's not always about being accountable. And you're thinking, what? What, Keith? You come here in front of the microphone, in front of the camera, and you always talk about accountability, and now you're telling me it's okay not to be accountable? No, it's okay to be human. It's okay to end a streak, to fail, to lose a battle, Maybe you cracked open the peanut butter jar. Maybe this shoulder won. Hell, maybe this shoulder won. Maybe you missed your workout this morning. Maybe you slept in. Maybe along the journey of the last 7, 30, 360 some odd days of your life, you weren't accountable to yourself, to your family, to your friends. Well, I'm getting in front of you, nation, right now today. I'm getting in front of all of you today. And I'm telling you, all of you, nation, that it's okay. Accept you're human. It's okay to accept what happened. But most importantly, and here's the message I need you to hear, it's okay to accept what's happened and begin again. We place so much pressure on accountability here in the lab and in society that sometimes it's equally important to emphasize the other word in the lab, and that's acceptance. Sometimes you know who you are listening right now, sometimes we are so afraid of failure that we don't even start. Hell, I was one of those guys. In my experience, it's the number one reason we do not fail and do not achieve our goals. Because we don't know how and where and when to begin again. Sometimes we're so scared of the streak ending that we'll kill ourselves trying to achieve it. Sometimes friends, sometimes Baplates, we need to fail to begin again. It's okay if something ends for the next to begin. Frankly, it's subtly how society works. When Friday ends, Saturday begins. When the season ends, the next one begins. When your career is over, the next one begins. It's just wrapping our head around what is happening, creating that awareness. That is the magic, gentlemen, of beginning again. Now, the power of accepting the idea of beginning again is something I learned from the great George Mumford. George worked with both Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan on their mental games. And accepting the idea of beginning again is similar to the idea of a next step, except in reverse fashion. You see, when you begin accepting again, you accept the idea of a reaction, not a proaction. It's accepting that it is not a failure. It's accepting that the journey has just only been interrupted. The streak is over, but the next one will begin. It's accepting that yesterday is yesterday and today is going to become tomorrow. Learning how to begin again is a wonderful skill. Learning how to accept that is an even bigger skill. So, if you need to learn and if you need help learning how to create that next step, and if you need help learning how to accept beginning again, we can help. The Business Athlete Performance Lab, Bapl, we're the accountability company. We create content for you to help entertain you and to help you be held accountable and to accept your next. And sometimes that next is simple, guys. The next streak, because when the current streak ends, we simply do one thing. We make a suggestion. We make a recommendation. You make the decisions to begin again. Hey, I'm Keith Bilous, and I sit here Monday to Friday. I bring it for you. Ideally, you bring it for me. And we're the accountability partners in business, in life, as we head down the journey to next. All right. Let's turn our attention to who's coming up next on the show. Next, first on the show, Andrew Petcash. We're going to go beyond the headline of sports as Andrew joins us over there on the screen. Let's bring him in to Live in the Lab. What's going on, Andrew?
Keith, what's up, brother? Love the intro.
What is up? What did you love about it?
You know, just got me in the vibe. You know, shifted me into this new energy sphere.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. We're trying to do things a little differently here. Trying to, as we say, Andrew, entertain and inform. I know you do a wonderful job informing and entertaining. I've heard your show. As a matter of fact, I will be honest with you. I did my lift this morning with it on. I got in the gym this morning and put it on and listened to your most recent episode. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. Well, I scanned through a bunch of them. I'm like, no, I'm going to listen to this one. And then, as a matter of fact, if I pulled up the old podcast, you'd see your show there. So,
I love it.
Where do you join us from today, Andrew Petcash, and take a second to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, tuning in today. And just quick on the intro too. So I actually worked with George Mumford too, as well. And that leads into the intro as well, but played basketball at Boston University. And so while we were there, our coaching staff hired George we had a down year and he hired him to come in, and it was cool. Had a lot of one-on-one individual sessions and got the same treatment to probably a little lesser degree than Kobe. And yeah, the next year, our junior year, I mean, obviously he's a very, very, very small percentage of it, but we won March Madness the next year. Championship. We didn't win March Madness. We won our conference tournament to get to March Madness. And that really began that was the end of really my first phase of life of basketball. And then jumped into the digital media business building world and built a college sports publication called College Athlete Insight. Sold that to the first company I worked for, Air. Helped take them from 0 to 150,000 active users. Learned a bunch on the product side and then came back to the digital media building world with Profluence and really breaking down within sports business, sports tech, sports VC, what's going on. And we have a holding company of a bunch of different media properties across regions and specific sports. So, cricket, pickleball, basketball, football, India, US. And then we most recently, the last couple of months, built a venture capital fund on top of all of our media properties, because we get all the deal flow and access in. We understand the space really well. We have all the relationships and connections. And so now pouring capital back on top of it. And then it flywheels, and we can now take our portfolio companies and push them the reverse way back through our media. So it's been awesome. That's the quick little background there.
The quick little background. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, I know we only have about another 40 some odd minutes. So I'll be booking session 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 with Andrew, because, plenty to unpack, to talk about. And I have to say, life sometimes just serves you up interesting guests at the right time. You talk about serendipity. So every morning as I go through my routine, I ask myself what my monologue is going to be. And my monologues are never planned the day before. They're never scripted. They just, I go through my morning and I think of something that's important that's kind of going on in my head in life. It's, within our pillars for our audience. And yesterday I really talked a lot about accountability and I started talking to myself because, we talk a lot in the show, Andrew, about, my battles with peanut butters and everybody's battles with accountability. And I'm like, wait a minute, sometimes we're going to fail and sometimes we're going to have to learn how to begin again. So I didn't know that you were going to come on to the show today and speak of your time with George Mumford, because that's where I learned of that concept from, was on Dan Harris's 10% Happier podcast, where he had Mumford on talking about this idea, Andrew, of accepting this idea that when something ends, you have to find a way to begin again. You follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'd have no idea that George worked with us either. Like there's really no trail of that anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. So it's pretty interesting.
That is really cool. So Andrew, share with us the journey from being a D1 basketball player at Boston University to founding Profluence. So you talked about it on a high level, right? But what were the turning points or lessons learned during the transition? Because one of the things we talk about with a lot of our athletes here is, and probably I'm going to assume maybe like yourself, you're an athlete on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and you wake up on Monday going, what am I going to do next? Out of that your transition became Profluence. Talk about that journey, Andrew.
Yeah, lucky for me, I had always built things in the background. Like sports was always the main thing. But when I was younger, in my teenage years, I built a YouTube channel. And I was always, trying to make money in certain ways. Built a landscaping company with some buddies that we did for several summers. So I was always, toying around with the money or the business side of things. But the main focus was sports, basketball, right? And then so all I did then now was flip that and say, okay, sports, fitness is now the smaller portion. Where I did a triathlon last year. I mean, I'm still putting in a lot of time, golf, tennis, like the triathlon, which I did. I want to do another one.
Good for you.
So like I just flipped. It was a little bit of business or school and then sports. And then now I just flipped it and said, now it's a little bit of sports and business. So for me, the transition was probably much smoother than 98, 99% of athletes because I had already been doing that stuff and now I just increased the quantity of it. And it was really, and still is really fun for me, especially because I'm building business within still the sports ecosystem as well, which I had a lot of experience and knowledge of prior to it. And now you're just, you're flipping to the other side. And now you're not the athlete, you are in my case the media or the founder or the investor into this stuff, which is great.
What I found interesting about your journey and story, Andrew, is it's like you've seen the future years ago, that the idea of an athlete now and in the future is a very duality role, isn't it? You are a creator as much as you're an athlete. You're an athlete as much as you're a creator. The days of the singular identified athlete, Andrew Petcash, are over, aren't they?
Way over, I believe. And especially now it's really, really interesting because there's so much money in especially NBA and NFL that, for example, Keith, you brought up in your intro, you sold your company for 30 million or whatever, and that gives you a great base. These athletes make that in a year.
Exactly.
And they're doing that for 10, 12 years. They're super high net worth individuals. Now they get taxed really heavily, and it's not like owning a business or real estate or a lot of the people that actually own the teams. But now athletes are starting to get smarter and go, okay, we're making a lot of money, and we also have all this social and digital media influence. We should be the ones owning the teams and the leagues, and we should be getting the tax breaks. So we're at this really weird inflection point of seeing that shift, and then you tie it into for however you believe about it, the diversity and all that stuff. It's just like we're at a really weird inflection point with a lot of that stuff, and I hope the athletes also they have a lot more liquidity and capital now. Go back to some of the areas that they came up through and are able to help build up and give back and provide their financial lessons. So. I always try to look at stuff with the glass half full. It's why when I jumped into the investing lane of this business, I didn't struggle at first, but I viewed everything as like, oh, this goes right, like really optimistic. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good to come, not only in sports, but just with athletes in general, and especially with name, image, and likeness in this downstream of, well, now there's college athletes making millions of dollars. There's soon going to be high school athletes. Okay, but how do you balance? Everything's a balance in life. So you have these athletes that are young making money. Let's make sure they're doing the right stuff. But also now youth sports are very commercialized, which takes away maybe a little bit of the teamwork and accountability and all the great stuff that sports brings to all of us that didn't make it professional in a true career. So yeah, we're at, like I said, interesting inflection point this upcoming year.
A couple things that strike me, Andrew. Digital nil that a lot of people don't really think about or talk about. It really is a game changer, isn't it? Especially as Web3 technologies and especially as the internet continues to evolve and digital ownership evolves and we accept new ways of consuming digital content. Think Apple Vision Pro, think of Meta, think of some of the technologies in the next 10 years. Like nil really is the game changer from an athletic perspective, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, it is. And we're seeing that with creator-led brands. And there's a stat now that 120 professional athletes have their own production companies. So I always say things are all the same, but they just look a little bit different.
Yes.
Now, before it was actors and entertainers and who the mainstream linear media pushed to us. And now it feels a little more organic, but it's the same thing. Now these actors and creators and YouTube stars are the new actors and actresses of our time.
Mhm.
So it's just coming through a different medium, but it's the
Mhm.
same thing. It's the same thing. So yeah, it's changed the game, but it's just doing it in a different way, but it's the same concept.
Do you see, what does professional sports look like to you in the next 5 to 10 years? And before you answer that, two-part question. Do athletes have a bigger ownership stake in it than ever before? And do we get to the point where athletes actually own the league?
It definitely looks a lot different in 5 to 10 years, for sure. We're already seeing that with what Saudi Arabia did in golf, and to say, and come in and use money really as the first piece of the equation, but really the broken, greedy model that the PGA Tour was, and say, no, these athletes are really worth this. They should own their media rights. We should put teams around this. And we're going to see them and other groups come in and disrupt these major traditional sports. I think it's also going to be a lot more entertainment focused. I'm born in 1998, so technically I'm at the very end stages of Gen Z, and I mean, I do a lot through my phone, and I have a short attention span, and so do most of my friends, and especially as it gets younger, it gets even worse, because I remember getting my first iPhone in 9th or 10th grade, where these kids all grow up with it from 2nd, 3rd grade or whatever. And it's changing the consuming habits and the viewing habits. And I don't want to sit through a 4-hour baseball game. I want to go watch the Savannah Bananas and see them dancing in between. So I think it's going to become even a little bit more entertainment focused. And so these are emerging and alternative leagues and niche plays have huge upside. And so even at Profluence Capital, we're looking at investing in a lot of those, because we're saying these traditional leagues are super overvalued potentially, and they're just so corporate and buttoned up that you need more of that entertainment and short attention span type product. And so, you know, we've done just one of our investments super interesting in a high school football league that's bringing all the top 4 and 5-star players within 12 regions and saying, these are the top players, let's have them play. Because young kids, they look up to those guys and they watch them on social media. And so we're like, this could become the next college sports. We don't know. I mean, we're taking a bet on it, but like, that's what we're super interested in. And obviously, you know, we have real skin in the game as well of where it's going.
I had Jonathan Anastas on, as I said earlier, from Clash TV.
Yep.
And when him and I met, and I reflected upon our conversation, Andrew, and then I heard your conversation this morning with the fellows from Team Snap. And then I watched my son's hockey game last night on Flow Sports TV. You see the trend here, right? Like there's nothing. I just spoke to you about 3 platforms that have nothing to do with the NFL, the NHL, or MLB, but yet they're digital streaming platforms that are the future of tomorrow's monetization of those athletes, aren't they? It really is. And it's hard. And when you see yourself in the middle of it now, like as I again watch Flow and use Team Snap and was introduced to Clash, it's hard not to step outside of it and really have like a duh moment. Like, of course, that's where the next version of live content is coming from for consumers, right? Pickleball, like these niche sports. If macro culture is gonna move to micro cultures, right? Where, hey, if pickleball can make a lot of money with 10 million, pick a number, 10 million niche people instead of having $100 to stream NFL. Well, you guys pay hundreds of millions of dollars to stream pickleball. It's just different categories of revenue for customers, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's going more towards a niche environment, I think, across a lot of businesses of what are you really interested in? Before, it's Sunday and your dad turns on the TV and there's 10 channels and you have to like the Pittsburgh Steelers because, I mean, that's what everyone in your family likes. That's what you do on Sundays as a family. You grow up with it and you like it. Well, now you sit in your room and you're scrolling through TikTok or whatever, and you go, wow, this is a really interesting sport. I like this. And then maybe you start to like an athlete, and then you go, oh, you start following them, and you become a fan. And then you maybe go, oh, wow, I like this team. And then you like a league. And so it's really interesting to see even NFL and MLS and some of these professional leagues build creator programs where they're paying their athletes or paying people from YouTube or TikTok to come and make content because they know they need to get to the Gen Z audience. And at the same time, at the alternative side of this is the linear media contracts keep going up where the broadcasters keep paying more and more money. So yeah, there's going to be a collision.
It's interesting to ponder whether the idea of a team and the value of a team diminishes over time. And follow my thought process here. When in reality, It's the individuals that are the value, right? Like a team is made up of a series of individuals. Well, if Andrew's authentic Andrew on social media and builds a big following, and Keith's the same thing, it really pulls into question the idea of a team compared to how I grew up and maybe you grew up, where tomorrow's team is really a bunch of individual creators bringing their following, very different, I'll call it ecosystem as much as ecosystem. A lot at play there. Do you follow me what I'm saying there?
It's all pushing towards communities. That's where I see everything going. And how valuable is your community and how engaged are they? And that's all sports teams are. It's a local subset of people that bond around the same thing. That's why people say, oh, soccer's like religion. What do you mean? They're the same exact thing. On Saturday, you go and watch a game, and that's what you do. And on Sunday, you go to church, and you get that. It's the same thing, right? And we all have our passions, and you build a community around that. And that's where you create emotion, and sports has that. It's now at an interesting spot because it is being viewed just as still that community and passion and interest, but it's also a very good asset class now that has a lot of monetization potential, and everything comes through sports because it's so ingrained in our societies and it's global, and athletes are very, very popular through social and all this. And so if you want to get your product to the mass consumption, you're going to have to come through sports at some point. And so it's opened up a lot of unique and differentiated things that we haven't seen before in history in this way. Like I said, everything's sort of the same, just it shows up a little different.
Well, and it's sports disguised as a competition. Like it's the one reason that brings us live so live content enables betting. Live content enables competition. Live content gives us a reason for Keith and Andrew to come together at Sunday at 1:00 to watch the Belmont Stakes for 90 seconds, right? Like there's still that one reason on the planet. That's it. It's either a competition or it's a sport. And now we're all just looking for these different spots on the planet going, okay, we can monetize that pickleball event over there. And there's 100 million people on the planet out of the 8 billion that want to watch that. Great. Let's go do that. Right. I believe, Andrew, I'm witnessing that here in Canada where I am with local talk radio. Let me explain. And perhaps we're even seeing it in the US with Bally Sports. So last year, over the last couple of years, TSN, the ESPN equivalent here in Canada, went and disbanded all their AM talk radio stations across the country, all their sports radio stations, right? So they had TSN in Winnipeg, TSN in Edmonton, and because we both know all the overhead that comes in with running a traditional radio station. So they disbanded all of them and shut them all down. Well, what came of that is the guys that ran the big popular shows there started their own independent shows. So now you have, Winnipeg Sports Talk here, you have Edmonton Sports Talk there, Regina Sports Talk here, and you can see the business angle here, right? So in a certain period of time, one person's going to go up and say, hey, let's start a network and let's recycle the ideas of the past and restart TSN of tomorrow with a new cost structure with a bunch of network stations. That is the future, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, we're at this time of fragmentation.
Yes.
And that's where the opportunity comes in as this all consolidates back up, like you said.
Yes.
We're building the same thing, just in a new way. Instead of radio, now you have podcasts. But guess what? It's still the same network format.
Yeah, yes.
And so that's why there's a big opportunity in the market, and that's why we've put a fund around it, and we're still raising and deploying and all that. But to say there's this fragmentation, it's going to consolidate. Well, if you get in now, then you get all the upside of when it consolidates and things start getting acquired and yada yada yada.
So then I'm a big fan of building in the open and sharing with my audience. You as an outsider looking in, perhaps as a smart guy in this industry, and some of the analogies we've been using, can see what I'm attempting to do here in the lab with the audience, with the content, with, perhaps similar to some of the things you're doing, right? That niching down to an audience, building content to entertain, inform them, and build a business on top of that, right? Just taking old school formats, repackaging them up and delivering them in a new way, right? That's really what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think too many people focus too broad on everything. My audience, I know, are the investors, operators, and founders within sports. You get some fans here and there, and you get a few offshoot people. But at the end of the day, that's who I'm trying to get to. So I'd rather get to 500 of them that love me and are core deep fans than 500,000 people that just, yeah, it's a little bit interesting and entertaining. And that's how and then you can get broader over time if you want. But I always say the riches are in the niches or the niches or whatever that phrase is. It's true.
That's extremely valuable advice for my listeners, Andrew. And I always like to offer up golden nuggets of information for our audience. And as I said to your audience, as athletes, retiring athletes, business leaders, we've very much niched down to. We know who we're speaking to. We know who tunes in, and when we I speak to them about this idea, and you're doing it yourself. And let's pivot to it. But it's the idea of the newsletter, and you talked about those 120, creator-led, brand-led companies by athletes. I really believe the future of tomorrow's athlete is building their own newsletter. And I know it's really simplified, but building your own database, building your own audience, controlling that audience, not having it controlled by social platforms. Because if you start that today, man, over the length of your career, that platform, that database becomes for you, ridiculous, isn't it?
There's a lot of interesting tools out there of people starting to think about this a little bit. So it's one of our core thesis too, is that's where it's going. And Web3 opened everyone's eyes to this. It was too early. And if you look at innovation, I'm not the perfect person to say this because I haven't built or gone through it, but I've had very successful people that have built in Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. And they say each one was fueled by scams and pornography. And Web 3 was scams and pornography. And now that's flushed out and we're going through the lows and it's going to come. And it's all around, like you just said, okay, athlete, you have 40 million Instagram followers or whatever. That's great, but they're just sort of there. Some people like you. Some people are just kind of following. Maybe some are haters, which haters are just as good as fans, or the same thing in disguise. But you should own them and push them, like you said, into your podcast or to your newsletter and monetize. And brands now are starting to get smarter where they go, okay, Instagram, like it's just not as effective. Like people know you're selling and promoting. But if it's your thing and you truly believe in it, then have that sponsorship in a newsletter, have that brand integrated into everything. And the athletes on the flip are starting to understand this concept of ownership. And so they're going, okay, yeah, I can make, I don't know, $10,000 for this post here, or I could own 1% of this company and post about them several times. And if I can get them here and they get acquired, I'm going to make way more. And so there's these two things going on of brands wanting more deeper engagement and true fans and know more about their audience, which is much more happening in an owned audience place like Web3 versus a Web2, which is social media. And you have athletes who want more ownership and, want to know who their true fans are, not just, hey, I have 40 million on Instagram. Maybe 10 million are fake. I have no idea. But in your newsletter, yo, these people really like me and they want to know about me.
Well, and I look at it this way where, excuse me, influence, and as an influencer, you are then largely influenced by your advertisers because that's your income. If you're a creator for your audience, you can be authentic and you can be real and you don't have to influence, so that your audience can then pay you for who you are and what value you bring to the table. And I believe there's a really distinct difference there, right? Somebody will subscribe to your content because it's real, it's authentic, doesn't have editorial opinions by somebody who's influencing you. I think that's a lot, in my point of view, a lot of tomorrow. And I think a lot of yesterday's athletes, to your point with the 40 million, 50 million, 100 million followers, were all duped into, I'll use the term duped, by the big networks. But in reality, they don't own any of that. The only person benefiting is Zuckerberg and everybody and all the shareholders of those platforms. So if you start your career as a young athlete today, I'm I guess in some ways pitching Bapl because this is what we do. But if you start your athletic career young, you start building your relationship with your audience over time, whatever your 3-year, your 5-year, your 7-year, 10-year career, and then you decide to be a real estate agent one day, because we know, Andrew, that careers end, right? We know that come your 30s, you're not going to continue being an athlete, so you got to go do something for the rest of your life. Well, imagine starting out with a database of whatever it is, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30,000, million, hundreds of thousands, like a database of human beings you can connect with. Like, that's power, man. That's power.
It's very powerful. Very, very. And we're in the very, very early innings of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're starting to see it play out. And I'm curious. We're seeing creator-led brands like we talked about.
Yeah.
And Gatorade runs the show and they do everything. And then Logan Paul and another KSI YouTube creator team up and they're climbing, man. They're 600 million this past year. They're climbing because the kids are watching Logan Paul and KSI on YouTube and TikTok and all that. And where's Gatorade? Gatorade's on their TV. Well, they're not. These kids aren't watching that. And really, innovation is bolstered by the younger population and generations. And that's why I'm always trying to like, talk to college kids or high school kids and be like, hey, what are you doing? What platforms are you using? What tools? Like, because they know everything. Like, they know all the weird. When you're a kid like that, you just know all the little tricks. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing for AI? Like artificial intelligence? How are you maneuvering that? And it's a fun time to be alive. It's a fun time.
It's a fun time to be an athlete, to be alive too, isn't it? And as a creator, I come back into the world now as a creator, my next journey in life. And it's a fun time to be a creator. All the tools, the ability to be yourself, to express yourself, and then find an audience, right? To your point, it's a hyper niche world. Go find an audience and connect with human beings, build an audience, and off you go.
Exactly. And not to go down rabbit holes or anything, but if you think about where we're at as society in the world in 2023 heading into 2024, there's this huge push for censorship and extra just bearing down on us, and all these social platforms that some people will say they were sort of created to control and manipulate information, just like news. They control the narrative and blah blah blah. And now we've built all these things that's actually exposed everything and blew it all up, where we really know why certain things happen and the agendas, and people are becoming more enlightened or whatever. And then it's this push to these ownership and niche communities of within these topics, and it's like the old guard sort of breaking and the new guard coming in. But like anything, it'll probably come full circle, just look a little bit different than it looks today. And I liked your point about advertise. I mean, everyone knows the athletes and celebrities that they have to release. They say something, they have to come back with some BS PR release saying, I didn't really mean, because their advertisers don't like that. And I don't like that world. And I hope we were getting away from it. I think the more authentic and true we all can be, the better for society and the world, but also just need some more realness. And I think people are sick of that.
Did you hear the news today that HBO canceled Real Sports with Brian Gumbel? So after 28 years, and maybe you don't know that show or know anything about it, but I only bring it up because it's a sports talk show. It was and it's related to our conversation right now, Andrew, because it was a hard show. Asked tough questions of the athletes, asked tough questions of the owners, asked tough questions behind the scenes. Expensive show to produce, well produced, great journalistic content, but yet generation now doesn't spend a lot of time watching long form content. Teams now control the narrative with their own communication teams. Journalists, newspapers cut journalists from following teams on the road. Where do we as the fans, Andrew, where do humans get the real story tomorrow from the athlete or from the team?
I feel like it's going to come from the athletes themselves.
I agree with you, but I wanted to ask this. That's why I go back to the newsletter. I think we're going to move into a world where the narrative itself, because the teams are already doing it, right? The teams have already said, okay, well, we're hiring Andrew as the communications guy. So Andrew now is going to create all the content coming from our hockey team. That's it. So that's going to be all of our content coming from Andrew. And I think, to your point, you're going to see the athletes all independently start having their own media teams almost, right? Which is their own narrative, their spin, their content, their story, how they want to present it to the public.
It's where it's headed. It opens up a lot of new cans of worms, and a lot of these athletes already have their egos around them, and so it's not just about being the best on the court or the field or the rink or whatever, but now it's also, hey, I want to be the best creator, I want to make the best investments, I want to be the best podcast host as an athlete. And that's what I'm saying. There's like this community dynamic going on and trend, but then at the same time, a lot of that's selfishly and individually driven of these athletes doing their own stuff, but they're still part of a team.
That's what I mean, right? Because
really,
yeah, like you have to be, for a team to succeed, you all got to come together. But if there's a bunch of egos now, so if now coming to the meeting room, imagine tomorrow's dressing room, Andrew, where Keith brings his media team. Andrew brings his media team. We all, every guy on our team brings their media team because we're all planning to win the championship. And then we're all planning for after the championship to have our content ready to go, to have Andrew's speech ready to go. Like, could you imagine tomorrow's dressing room with these teams of egos coming in, making sure that all the content is ready to go for post game, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm excited to see how it plays out, but I mean, no one knows. No one knows.
Yeah.
We're in this weird world, even with AI and all of that opens up as well, where what's real and what's not is a thin line anymore. I mean, the deep fakes and all
Yes.
that. And so, like I said, it's a fun and exciting time, but there's a lot of crazy stuff going that it's just, just take it. We're alive and I'm a human and
Yeah.
make it whatever you want for the journey. Like you were saying at the beginning, just accept it and
That's it.
on to the next season. And the next season is also, a life to whatever's next.
Thoughts on VR and AR and Apple Vision Pro and some of the content they're rumored to be working on with Apple and so forth? What are with the NBA? Do you have any insights, any opinion on that?
From a application to sports, I don't see AR and VR being, I want to pull that back. I see AR being very applicable and that technology is ready. I want to separate them. I think they get bunched in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
VR, I just don't see it yet or in the very near future. People either want to be in the games or they just sort of want, it's not immersive enough. It's not there. Apple, if they've done anything right, is they know what's next in terms of the digital landscape. I mean, it went from the iPod to the iPhone to the Mac computer to the watch to the AirPods. Like they set that trend and they have a monopoly over the, I mean, they own a lot of us. Like, let's just be honest. Like I have my Apple Watch and my Apple computer and my phone and the and they all connect and it's easy and they got you and a TV and so like their Vision Pro, I'm very, very curious to see how it is and where it goes and what it looks like. But if there's anything Apple's done, they've been right and they've been right early before things take off. So
I certainly like to nerd out with that, with Apple and with tech and so forth. And I've been doing a lot of reading around the Vision Pro and around their rumored alignment with the NBA and their ability to take you courtside to the game. So if you have a Vision Pro, one of the rumors is the killer app is the NBA app coming out, which will actually take you courtside to the game, strap the headset on and be there on the court. So I think new content experiences delivered to us through the headsets are going to be, in my opinion, some of the game-changing things happening in the future. And obviously not going to happen overnight, but I do believe the next 3 Christmases, Andrew, are going to be headset Christmases, right? Where you're going to see like this last, I don't know if you knew this, but this last Black Friday in America, the Meta 3 headset outsold Apple AirPods. So that was kind of a pivotal moment in the tech world where the something you strapped on your face outsold what Apple put in your ears. So just those little nuances that happen underneath the headlines that I pay attention to that are interesting to me.
And there's a lag effect too, because if that's what kids want, it takes it takes years for them to get up to have that consumer spending ability, but then they're going to keep advancing on that. And then it goes down to their, so there is that lag effect that a lot of people sort of forget about. When everyone's talking about it and it's hot, you're probably late to the game. But, just a tip on that. And you see that in everything, when everyone's going to start Bitcoin, it's back at 45, you got to get in. Like, you should have been in back again when it was at 20 and no one was talking. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, as humans, we're very emotional and like very just kind of stupid with a lot of that stuff, because we know when everyone else is like down and out is when the real opportunity is. And when everyone else is hot, that's when you should be pulling chips off the table.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, talk about you're right in the middle of the sports world, the business world, the tech world, the media world. Betting is also a big part of those worlds. Sports betting has just come out of the woodwork in the last 24, 36 months, 48 months or so. It's everywhere. Talk about the influence of sports betting on tomorrow's sports.
It's playing a huge piece to the puzzle. It's the greatest fan engagement tool ever created. Because even if you look at women's sports particularly, they're very much driven in viewership by betting. Once people have been able to bet on those games, it's more an intrigue to watch, which is interesting. And there's a lot of interesting regulation and stuff around it, of legal stuff, of our, games being blown. There's just a lot of money in it, and so it raises flags for me and many others of, okay, like, these are big companies now, sports betting. There's big people behind these leagues. Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of consumer money, and if there's anything, the poor guy always gets wrecked, and the rich guy always gets richer, right? So,
and that's what I mean. Like, who's going to be left asking the tough questions if all the media is owned by the sports teams, and we move from a macro culture to a micro culture? I hope companies like Profluent Sports and the stuff that you're doing and the companies you're investing in, perhaps on the media side, are going to be some of those companies asking some of those tough questions, right, along the way, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Barstool Sports does it through comedy. And
yes,
I mean, you even look at Pat McAfee. He was very open about everything, and then once he got scooped up by Fandom and ESPN, and I get it, right? It's, you're working hard and you're building this, and you might be doing all right, but it's like that sit back of, wow, I just got a big payday, and now he's good. Now you can't say everything you want to say.
Yes.
And
yes,
you need a mix of both. You need. I get the buttoned up corporate side, and
yes, of course.
But you need the people that will say what they really think, and social's opened up more of that, because before the media can completely control it. Now through social, it's controlled. Mm-hmm. But it's more open, where you can get random people that can blow up and get big. But like you said, even them, it's not stable. You're renting an audience, and you could get banned tomorrow or get hacked tomorrow and lose all of it. And so you need those downstream funnels, and whether that's blockchain or newsletters or whatever that looks like, it's important. So people have their voice, and we can keep this balance.
Absolutely. Andrew Petcash, before we say goodbye, anything you want to throw on the table that I have not asked you about? Some time to pitch here. Profluent Sports, profluence.com. Plus, you have the newsletter over at petcashpost.com, which is a Substack, a podcast. You got all the media out there. Anything I haven't asked you about, you want to make sure the audience knows about? Anything that we haven't covered today, you want to make sure we cover?
I think we covered a lot. I mean, the bottom line is, we sit in the middle of a lot, and we built a bunch of media properties around it, and we're building a fund on top of it to give people access not only to the investments and the returns, but also the access into this space. Because we found, there's a lot of people that they just want to be at these events with the athletes and builders and teams and leagues. And so we've built, verticals and vehicles that can put you in a place to get returns, but also, get access to all this, which it's fun and it's cool, and people love sports and it's sexy, and we sit in the middle of a lot of it. And it's fun. It's really cool.
That's great. That's great. Andrew Petcash, thanks for joining me here today. Live in the lab. I'm going to stick you off in the green room there. Go say goodbye to the audience and come back and walk you out.
Love it. Thank you, Keith.
Hang tight, my friend. All right. We're going to do that. Going to bring me over here, there, and there. All right. What a great conversation with Andrew Petcash from Profluent Sports. Always interesting things happening underneath it all, right? I know we spend a lot of time watching the game, entertained by the game, enjoying the outcome of the game, but what fascinates me, what happens behind the scenes of the game, and that was certainly a big part of our conversation today with Andrew. So I hope you leave today's show entertained, informed, inspired by something we talked about at the beginning about, being willing and accepting of beginning again. Powerful skill. So if you haven't heard that, tuning in late, I invite you to go back to the beginning top of the show. Listen, you can find us here Monday to Friday, noon Central, -6 GMT on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And of course, we have fresh content dropping daily in the inbox. You can subscribe to it inside.bapl.ai. Hey, we're building our newsletter. You heard the conversation. Got to build our audience. Inside.bapl.ai. And while you're there, go subscribe to the Petcash posts as well. Go subscribe to it. Get that content in your inbox as well from Andrew. All right, I'm out of here. I'll see you tomorrow. Craig Cook joins me live in the lab, noon Central. I'm out of here. See you guys.